before we continue on. 1 minute, it's been recorded. Okay. Mervin's question was what? Would you like to?
Well, we just said you can't. We said you can't apply the posuk. There are two cases where you can't apply kasher zomamnas as they intended. One of them was a Kohen. They said this this Kohen married a Gurusha, and so
it's
the implications because
son.
you can't carry it on to the next generations. But if the agent themselves were Kohanim, I don't see why you couldn't.
Very good, and we answered that question because there's a
David
He said lo below Lazara. Adim Zomim is not passed on. It the if you like, whatever the rule of Adim Zomim does not pass on to next generations, and that would happen if you made the individual who is a Kohen a non-Kohen. Then if he's non-Kohen, then his children will be. Says the Gemara, I'm doing now Daf Beis Amud Aleph, 4 lines up.
Yeah, because I'd be so excused there because you can't kasher as he intended to do.
Right.
He entered to make it for all generations, yeah.
Right. So the Gemara then suggests, well, I tell you what, if you can only make, in other words, the Adim Zomim rule will only apply to him, not his future generation. Let's do that. Let's at least make him a non-Kohen. Says the Gemara, you can't because that's not what they intended.
Yeah, well, why can't you make future generations as well then?
Because there's another part, 2 lines earlier, which says Adim Zomim punishment is only on the individual, not future generations. Even though they intended.
Yeah, so it contradicts. It sort of qualifies kasher zomamnas
there. But Asisem low below Lazara.
Okay, all right. So it's an exclusion of kasher. Okay, all right.
The point is doing that because you can't do. It's not what you intended. So therefore, it falls out of the whole rule of Adim Zomim, and therefore, as we saw last week or last time, it goes into the rule of Makkas, and that's what instead of Adim Zomim rule. Okay, good. Let's move on, gentlemen. We are on Daf Beis Amud Beis, and if you remember, we started last time looking at 4 exceptions to the rule of Adim Zomim. 2 of them we've had in the Mishnah, and we're now going to pick up. There's another 2 plus 1 additional one from Rabbi Akiva. So let's have a look at the Gemara, please. 1, 2, 3. 6 wide lines down. I'm getting a bit of feedback, Peter. Maybe I haven't got everybody on mute. I think that's better. Yes, it is. Thank you. 6 wide lines down on Daf Beis Amud Beis. Are we okay? We will need your services, Peter. So, finger on the buzzer. Right, here we go. The third rule about Adim Zomim is, have you got it 6 lines down? The Ein Mishalmin es HaKofer. They do not pay this, well, Kofer really means ransom, but it doesn't mean that, as we'll have a look at the Psukim. Let's have a look, please, at Shemos, Peter. 21:30. Shemos 21:30. Actually, we probably need before that 28. 21, 28. Thank you. (21, 28). Oh, well done there. Mishpatim 21, scrolling down speedily. 28. Very good. 27, 28. Here we are. V'chi yigach shor es ish o es isha v'meis. Sad case where an ox, not only an ox, could be anything else, is isha, a goring. Sadly, the person dies. Sokol yisokol ashor, the shor is killed. Below Yelcheles Besoro can't be eaten. Oval Hashor Noki, the owner of the ox is Noki, means he's free. There's no actual punishment, as it says here. He didn't know that. However, look at Pasuk 29. Next Pasuk. Vim nagoch shor nagoch. Nagoch. Always you find that form which talks about normally is almost like a chazon. A nagoch means it was a ox which was goring. It says in the habit of goring. Mitmal shilshon. Strictly speaking, that means yesterday or 2 days. Shilshon is up from sholish. Yesterday or from today, a 3rd day back, and it gored again today. Then v'huad bivolov, and after not only today, yesterday, the day before, and the owner was warned. V'huad, there was a warning went up. V'lo yishmerenu, clearly he didn't guard it. He should have taken great precautions and care. And then yes, the animal is killed. V'gamba olav yumos. But that means bidei shomayim. He's chayiv miso bidei shomayim. Have a look. Before we look at the Rashi, let's look at the Rashi. If you double click commentary, let's go to Rashi. Oh, it's on the net. Go up, Apostle. Sorry, I should have gone to 29 and double click. Oh, there we are. The thrust yesterday and the day before. Yeah, let's go to Hebrew first. Hare sholosh negichos. There have already been 3 gorings. That's what the Mechilta said. So the question is, what goring are we talking about now? We are talking, therefore, about the 4th goring. So he had 3. He gets a warning. Up to 3, it just might be, one of those things, accident, even on the part of he didn't expect it. But once it's gored 3 times, there's your chazok of 3 times. Then it's called a shor nagoch. It's what's called a muad. Muad means it's an ox that you've been warned about. Then he's warned with Adim. If it then kills, then go scroll down the Rashi, please. V'gamba olavius bidei shomayim. In heaven, that means that he's chayev min hashomayim. V'yochel bidei odom. I might have thought maybe even here he's killed. No, there's a pasuk which says mosumas hamakeh. Someone who actually kills themselves is a murderer. Then he is put to death, but not if his animal kills. Right? You can press the A, you get the English of that as well. No, on the other side, on the right-hand side, you've got the A on Rashi. Up. Press the A on Rashi. Up. There, yeah. The Gamba Olav Yumos, the man said, since it's a different oxid, go, only the Lord. No, scroll down. Scroll down. Yes. Visitation of God. In other words, it's a heavenly death penalty. You might perhaps think he is being punished by human. In other words, he will be killed here. No, only if someone kills and one is a murderer, the force, without going into details here, only a murder committed by himself, someone's put to death, and that's of course part of the Aseres Hadibros, those sirtzach. But you should, and it's, in other words, there's a posuk to tell us that here, going back to our psukim, so we're talking here about an ox which is used to goring, a habit of goring. It's gored 3 times. On the 4th time, he's chayav miso b'dei shomayim, and the animal's killed. But now, posuk 30 is important. Im kofer yushas olav. Now, and it's translated here about if. Turn to the Aleph, please, on the Rashi. Come out easier, I think. Right. Im kofer yushas olav, which means you're right. Translated literally, I might have thought this im means if a ransom is imposed upon him. When you say a ransom, it means a monetary payment. Says Rashi, this im is not conditional. Im ze ena tolu, tolu means hanging. It's not conditional. V'hariu kamo im kesef talve es ami. If you lend money, it doesn't mean if, because you should always try and lend money if you've got the money to, and somebody asks you for a loan. Loshen asher, when. In can sometimes mean when. Ze mishpotu. So in other words, when the ransom is imposed upon him. So yeah, the translation here in English is not as Rashi or the Meforshim explain. So what are we talking about here? The ox gored. It's an ox which is used to or has the habit of goring because it's already gored 3 times. Then on the 4th occasion, the owner should have taken much more care. If it gores a 4th time, then when there is, that's what Rashi explained, this ransom payment. It's not ransom, it means a payment of money, a monetary payment as well to the family. Don't forget, this ox has gored and killed someone. The nosan, and he should give pidyon nafsho. And what's his pidyon nafsho? He's like redeeming himself, redeeming redeeming his soul, according to what's imposed upon him by the Beis Din. Now, what does that mean? So he has to pay an amount which the Beis Din will decide. It's a value which is placed upon him, and this will come as a pidyon nafsho. It's an atonement for his soul for what's happened. So in this occasion, there's Misa b'dei Shomayim, the heavenly court. The ox is going to be killed. And on top of that, there's a monetary payment on the value of, now that's the question. You pay the amount which is imposed by the Beis Din. So it is a pidyon nafsho, redeeming his soul from this death. So it's the value of the human being. And how do you value? Of course, you can't really value an individual. The way you do that is imagine the individual was to be sold in those days on the slave market. So there you'd look at gender, you'd look at age, you'd look at health, and you say how much this person would. So in other words, that's considered a monetary payment that you make to redeem the owner of the ox because of what has happened. Are you there? Let's go back to the faces. Is that all right? And then in case you want any further clarification, could have Malcolm with us as well. So what's happened here? There is a redemption on top of the Chiyuv Misa b'dei Shomayim. His ox is gored, and he should have taken more care. And there's also a monetary payment depending on the value of the individual. And when we say it's monetary value here, we're not talking about how valuable he is to society or what a great tzaddik or whatever he might be. We're taking a monetary value as an eved. That amount is paid as a redemption for this individual, for this having happened. Okay? However, back to our Gemara. If therefore someone came and said to Adim that this individual's ox We know, we've been there. We've been in the previous Bezdin that this has happened. His ox has already gored 3 times. It was the 4th time when this person was killed. And therefore, you want this other individual to pay this compensation payment, redemption money. That money is not passed on to Yedim Zomimim. Okay? They wanted him to pay that money. It is not transferred across to the Yedim Zomimim. That is have you got it? 6 wide lines down in the Gemara. Ein mishalmin es hakofer. They do not pay this kofer. Notice from the word kapora. Yeah, it comes as a kapora, an atonement, a redemption for what has happened. He did not take sufficient care with his animal. That's why this happened. And therefore, he has to pay. Normally, a person would pay, but the Eidim Zomimim do not pay that extra amount. They don't pay any money at all. Although they intended the other individual to pay the money. Now, says Gemara, why? It must be Kasovre, the brisa that we quoted when we quoted this 3rd exception to the rule of Eidim Zomimim, Kufra Kapora. This payment is an atonement for what happened. It's his own ox that gored. In the normal case, it will be someone's ox that gored. He needs an atonement for that Avera. That atonement is not relevant, that's what we're saying, to the Eidim Zomimim. Now, it's true, they wanted him to make that payment, but that whole payment, it's not as if it's a compensation in any way. Sadly, this person was killed. It's a kapora. And that kapora is only relevant to someone whose actual ox or any animal killed. With me? So Kasobre says the Gemara, Kufra kapora vahane, these people, la b'nei kapora ninu. Kufra kapora. Have a look at Rashi, 2nd narrow line up. Kufra kapora, this kofer, like a ransom. It's not a ransom, it's a payment. It really from the same word as a kapora. Lachape alzeh, it's coming as an atonement. Shehorag shoire eso odom. Of course, there's no real way to make up for that lost life, but it comes in some way as a kapora for someone whose ox actually killed someone. Says the next Rashi, last narrow line, Vahani, these Eidim Zomimim, la b'nei kapora ninu, shelo horag sholom odom. So if in another case, for example, where they say that Reuven owed Shimon 1,000 pounds, and they're found to be Eidim Zomimim, they will have to pay that. That's what they intended him to pay. Here, it's true they wanted him to pay the kofer because they said his ox had gored for a 4th time or more. But that payment, it's not a payment in the normal type of payments. This is a payment as a kapora. And as such, it's not relevant to move across to the Eidim Zomimim. Are you with me? Back to the Gemara. Vahani la b'nei kapora ninhu, beginning of the line. 7 wide lines down. Says the Gemara, is this a kapora or not? Man tanu kufra kapora, but there is in fact an argument about this. Omar Rav Chisda, Rabbi Shmuel ben Noshe, Rabbi Yochanan ben Barokahi. It looks like this is not a view held by everybody, that it's a kapora. What does that mean? Why? Desanya, look at this. Do you remember the Pasuk said, V'nosan pidyon nafshe, he pays a ransom, he pays an amount, a redemption for his soul. How much does he pay therefore? His value or the person who's been killed, their value? Says the Gemara, "V'nosan pidyo nafshe." He pays the redemption of his soul. Who's that? Demei nizak. The value, the worth of the person who was harmed and killed. That's what it means, pidyon nafsho. Rabbi Shmuel beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka omer demei mazik. You pay the value of the person who killed. You with me? So there's an argument here whether you pay this value. Is it the value of the person who was killed, or the value of the person whose ox killed? It sounds very much like if you're paying the value of the person who killed, in other words, it was his ox who killed, then it would be a kapara. If you're paying the value of the person who died, it sounds like it's not a kapara, but it's a payment. You've lost that individual. At least you can pay up the monetary value of the person who was killed. You with me? That's not coming as a kapara. That's coming as a loss of the individual who's been killed. Are you with me? So it sounds like if there's one person saying you pay the value of the individual whose ox gored, that I can understand is a kapara. Yeah. So it sounds like one of them is holding its kufra is mamoina. That's why you're paying the value of the person who was killed. Have a look at Rashi. Dama sobra kufra mamoina shehizik gufoy shel zeh, harming, killing this other individual. Therefore, you need to pay up. The least you can do is pay up the value of this individual who was killed to Yoshov, to the people who would inherit this dead person. Demei hahoreg, the value of the one who was killed. That's at least. Obviously, there's still chayiv misa b'nei shomayim, but if you're paying the value of the one who was killed, this is like compensation, and a compensation payment really could be paid by Eidim Zomamin. If, however, you say you pay the value of the one who killed, that's not a compensation, it's coming as a kapora. Have a look at Rashi. Kufra kapora, it sounds like it's coming as a kapora, lachape al atzmai, to atone for this individual whose ox gored. Shechayiv misa b'nei shomayim, he's chayiv misa in dei shomayim. Therefore, he should give his own value because he needs a kapara. Do you understand? If you're giving the value of the individual who's ox gored, it must be coming as a kapara. That's what we think. Back to the Gemara. In which case, if that's true, and then one said demei mazik and one said demei nizik, it looks like there is an argument about whether this monetary payment is indeed a kapora or not. In which case, our Gemara that said you do not transfer that money to Eidim Zomamim is going with the view that it's a kapora, but that itself is a machlukas. Answers the Gemara, no. Go from the beginning of line of Yochanan. My love, wouldn't you say this is the argument between them? If you pay the value of the person who was killed, then it's a compensation payment. The one who says you pay the value of the individual whose ox gored, it's coming as a kapara. In which case, our Gemara that says you don't transfer that money across because it's not relevant, it's not coming as an atonement for an ox goring, because that's not what happened. They are Eidim Zomamim. Sounds like it's a machlokas. Omer Rapapa, no. The Kula Alma, everybody holds Kufra Kapora. It is, in fact, this payment comes as a kapora, to help a kapora for the individual whose ox gored. This is the argument. How do you pay this kapara? One individual heard you pay with nizuk according to the value of the one who was killed, but it's still coming as a kapara. Shai minon, that's how you do this calculation, this valuation. Umar soba b'damazik shai minon. Full stop. With me? So, what are we left with? We're left with a machlokas. That's true. How you do the calculation, but in any event, that money or that monetary payment will not pass on to the Eidim Zomimim. Why? It's not relevant. It's as simple as that. If it was a compensation, if it was something which they said they should pay as a payment, like a loan or damages, then that you can make up, and Eidim Zomim would have to pay that. But if it's a payment which they wanted the individual to pay as a kapora, that kapora is not relevant to the Eidim Zomim, and therefore they don't pay it. Okay? So either way, this is going to be excluded, whether or not the valuation's done on the value of the person who was killed or the person who's ox gored. It doesn't matter. It's always coming as a kapora and therefore is not transferred to the Eidim Zomimim. What is left, just as an aside almost, why is there this machlokas? Forget about the Eidim Zomimim, but in fact, if this happens, and sadly, this individual's ox gored and killed for a fourth time, and the payment is to be made, why is there this machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael, Ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zohar, who says you calculate it using an evaluation of the person who's ox gored, and the other view, the Tanakama, who says it's the main nizek, the value of the person who was killed. Why is there a machlokas? If it's a kapora, why is there a machlokas between whether the valuation should be, you'd expect logically to be the value of the person who actually his ox killed? If it's coming as a kapora for himself, says the Gemara, ma tama, the Rabbanon. What is the reason of the Rabbanon, the Tanakama, who says you value according to the person who was killed? Says the Gemara, Ne'emar, and we'll need your help, Peter. Ne'emar hashoso. Now, you may have a little letter in the Gemara. In mine, I've got a little base, and it goes across to what's called the Hagos Habach. Bach stands for the Bais Chodosh. Have you got that? In mine, it's a little base.
Raviol Circus.
Yes, well done, sir.
Krakow.
Yeah, very good indeed. Yeah, absolutely. The Bach. Look him up, yes. And he's changing the text. He said the text is not correct. In fact, you can see from Rashi agrees, or Rashi, of course, earlier, the Bach may be basing it on the text of Rashi. Nemo hashoso lamalo, v'nemo hashoso lamato. This word yoshis, whatever's placed on the individual, that same term is used earlier on. If I can call on you, Peter, please. Back to Shemos 21. We were looking at 21:30, weren't we? Yeah, im kofer. Remember, we said that it doesn't mean if. When this ransom, when this payment is placed, imposed, if you like, yushas. Now, scroll up to Posuk 22. Another sad case, or mishpotim. Ki inotzu anoshim. Bit of fighting going on. Posuk 22. Double click there. Yeah. Ki inotzu anoshim. V'nogfu, and one of them pushes Isha Hora, this expectant pregnant lady. V'yotzu yulodel, she has a miscarriage. V'lo yihia also. No, nothing else. She is not killed, but nothing else. But she loses the children. Onesh onesh. They should surely be, that's from Loshen Onesh, a punishment. Karshe, there's your word, Yoshis olov Baal Ho'isha. As of course, the husband will come to court, the lady will come to court, and they will assess the nosam biflibin, right? Karshe Yoshis olov. And what does that mean? Just scroll down Rashi a minute below, please. Across the page, scroll down. Onish, yeah, there we are. L'shalem de mevalodus, that least they'll have to pay is the value of the miscarriage. Shomin oiso, how would you value that? You'd value someone who could have been sold, just as a valuation. Someone sold with or without these, the vlodas, if you like. She's a pregnant lady. What will be the difference in value of someone buying? Imagine, it's an imaginary sale, imaginary Eved being sold. She was expecting, right, a pregnant lady, obviously a greater value. That value will be placed on this individual to pay, because that's the damages that have been caused here, the monetary value. But the main point we're looking at here, clearly it's the value of the velodo. So it's a value of the one who was harmed, in this case, the fetuses, she miscarried. So it's a value not of the individual who caused the two people fighting. It's the value of the lady involved. With me? So now, as we scroll down to 30 again, in our example, says the Tanakama, there's your kacholashe yushas, that same word in Hebrew is used, just as earlier it meant the nizik, the one who was harmed. Here as well, the value will be the one who, the individual who was killed. That's the value you will take, albeit it's coming as a kapora for the person, the owner of the ox. You with me? Back to our Gemara, please. Back to our Gemara. Thank you very much. So back to the Gemara. It says, Ma tamau. What's the reasons? Hold on a minute, Malcolm. Ma tamau d'Rabban. What's the reason of the rabbis who say the calculation is done based on the value of the person who was killed? I'm repeating this. It says this word earlier, as we've seen. Thank you, Peter, where he was talking about this case of this lady who miscarriage. Because of the fighting that was taking place. And we know there that the value was the value of the person who was harmed. That's the lady. It says it here, lower down in our example with the goring ox. Just like over there, it was talking about the one who was harmed. That is the view of the Tanakama, why you do the valuation based on the nizak. Right, Malcolm had a question on that.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I missed the beginning. So my question is sort of double question. It's like, who has it been mentioned? You know, when it's talking about payment and penalty.
Yes.
I mean, there's never specified where the money is going, right?
Oh yeah.
Except when you said the edim's Zomamim, and I'm not sure.
No, hold on a minute. If they said that this individual's ox gored,
yeah,
in those terms,
yeah,
and kills someone, then they make a payment to the inheritors of the person who passed away, who was killed, right?
So it's going across. So the payment is going across to the victim, also to the
yes. But that is
payment.
Not right. If it was a case of Edim Zovim, it turns out this was the whole thing was false. It's not just a pack of lies. The Edim themselves were elsewhere, couldn't have seen the thing at all. know nothing about it, well, they may know about it, but they weren't there, then although normally we've always had this rule, Asisem lo kasha zomam, whatever they intended is passed across, remember? It bounces back onto them. This is an exception because the payment that's made in the case of the ox that gored is coming as a kapora that his animal actually killed someone. It's not relevant for Edom. It's not like a compensation payment or anything like that, which would move across. That payment is strictly for someone whose ox is gored, and therefore that does not move across. Here, had it been that they've said that the individual owed £10,000 as a straight loan or something and hadn't paid it, then they would pay that if they're Edom Zomimim. But this case, it's a payment which comes as a kapora. Yeah, it's not a compensation payment, so therefore they don't pay it. Yeah?
So when you say they pay,
the
Edim has to pay
normally
because of their false witness, because of their false.
Normally, let's take a standard example. They say that Reuven owed Shimon £10,000. It's not true. They weren't there. They didn't see this loan take place. They would have to pay £10,000 to Reuven. They've got to make amends to Reuven. That's the normal case if you're talking about money. Edom Zomim means they pay up what they intended Reuven, in the case of Reuven and Shimon, what they intended Reuven to pay, they will have to pay themselves. That's the case.
In terms of the ox, in terms of
the case of the ox, what we're saying is that's an exceptional case. That's all. We're looking at the moment at exceptional cases. We saw a couple of them before.
Sorry, I'm just not understanding a very basic point. Is the Edom Zomim the person that reports that the ox gored somebody,
right?
But turns out that they didn't? I didn't quite understand. What's the false witness?
They come to court and say that Reuven's ox killed Shimon, and it was an ox which was had a habit of goring. And they should have taken more care. They didn't. Then normally what would happen is Reuven would have to make a kapora payment, a klifa payment, right? That's what would have taken place.
Yes. And if it turns out they're wrong,
that's fine. What we're saying is then it turns out that those people who said this had happened are Edom Zomimim. In the normal situation, they would make that payment themselves to Reuven. In this case, they don't, because it's an exceptional case. Payment for one's ox killing someone, why should there be the payment there, comes to help towards this kapora that's needed for the individual whose ox gored. It's not relevant for Edom Zomim. That's what we're saying. Yeah? So it's an exceptional case, and they don't pay it.
But in that case, was somebody killed by the ox? I mean,
the thing never took place.
It never took place.
Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't this person's ox. I don't know.
Yeah,
but whatever.
I see. Okay.
This Reuven who owns this ox, he is not hired to pay anything. Never was.
Yes. But in case of the other case that you brought, the payment goes to the husband, let's say, of the.
Oh, that was nothing to do with Edom Zomimim. That was just there. It's true. That we weren't looking at Edom Zomimim there. That's a straight compensation payment.
Okay, I understand. Yeah. So it's
that's
a difference between.
Had it been an Edom Zomimim about that, they would pay.
But if there is a
kapora.
But if the kapora, now that it's clarified, if there is a payment of a kapara and there is a payment of the compensation payment, the compensation, if there are two payments, two types of payment. One is a kapara and one is a
momo, what's called momo, just a normal monetary payment.
Yes. Okay. So in the case of the normal payment, it goes to somebody. But where does the kapara payment go to?
That would also go to normally to the children, the inheritance. As
it wouldn't go to the high priest or something. It wouldn't go to the temple.
No. This comes as a kapora. No. Normally, without the Eidim Zomim being involved, then the Reuven would have to pay this money to Shimon's inheritors. Normally, but Eidim Zomim, that payment is not made. That's what we're saying here. So it's a very specific case of law. Okay, that is the view of the Tanakama, who says you take the value of the person who was killed, even though it's a kapara. That's the way you calculated it. Continue the Gemara. What about Rabbi Yishmael? Rabbi Yishmael says no, v'nosan pidyon nafsho. You're meant to be paying its redemption of his soul. If it's his soul, then it should be his value that he's paying, right? With me? So that's why there is this machlokas. It says you pay the value of his soul. He needs the kapara, so therefore it's his valuation. Says the Gemara, okay, that is very good, but what about the Rabbanon who says you don't do that? What do they do with this posuk? Says the Gemara, and you're quite right. It comes as a kapara and a pigeon. He's being paid there, saving, if you like, redeeming his own soul. That's true. But how do you make the calculation? The calculation is based on the value of the person who was killed. It's true. It is pigeon nafshay. It's coming as you say, redeeming his soul. But how do you do that? Says the Gemara, but this calculation is done through the value of the person who was killed. So, what's the end of this? I see your yellow hand up. 1 second, Mervyn. We've got here, there's an argument. How, it's a technical point. Do you pay based on the value of the person who's killed, or the person who was killed, who actually was killed? But both hold it is coming as a kapara payment. And as such, it's not relevant to pass on to Eidim Zomimim, and therefore it is one of the exceptional cases of Eidim Zomimim. Mervyn. Mervyn, come in.
Yeah, no, so it's just interesting. I mean, this whole discussion must be quite an unusual case. I mean, what motive would these Eidim Zomimim have? What motive would these second pair have to be mezamim in the first pair? I mean, it's not a vendetta. It's not a monetary gain.
The second pair, you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm saying the Eidim Zomimim. With Eidim Zomimim, you've got two pairs of. You've got pairs. Said the first pair who testified that Reuven's ox gored whatever,
which is not true in the end, because the second pair show that they weren't there to see this.
They weren't there, but I mean, what? And then there's. I mean, what motivates the?
Oh, okay. You have some type of vendetta. I have no idea, but you're right. Yeah,
I mean, it's not as if there's any gain on for the witnesses who.
Well, you can say that with any case, when they come forward and say that Reuven owes him £10,000 or something.
There may be payback. There may be payback or something like that. Who knows what goes? There are other sort of.
There must be some type of vendetta. You're right, rare, but nevertheless a vendetta or whatever. But if this happens,
in this case, it seems anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Hopefully, it shouldn't. Something will happen much, but the rules are there. The rules are there, even though. Yeah, the principle, absolutely.
The case. Yeah, okay.
That's quite important because you see the idea of these Eidim Zomimim. It's not coming as a kapara for them, but nevertheless, clearly they've got to make amends, and they, in a normal case, if it will be momo in a straight monetary payment, then they would have to pay it. This is what they plan to do. Again, why did they come forward as Eidim Zomimim? There could be a lot of reasons. Maybe there is a bit of a payoff they're expecting out of this. I don't know. They could have expected a payoff out of this case with the Eidim, with the ox as well. They may have been, known the other members of the family, inheritors, and they'd say that they get a cut if they come forward. whatever. But you're right, rare, but nevertheless on the books and the principles we can learn from it. So that's number 3. On we go, gentlemen. Number 4. Number 4 was, what was the 4th exception to Eidim Zomimim? And that was Ein Nimkorin Be'eved Ivri. Woo. What's it mean, Ein Nimkorin? What's the case being sold as an Eved Ivri? Have a look at the Rashi. It's about, because we had this at the beginning, it's about 12 narrow lines up. This is the case where they come forward and say, again, hopefully it shouldn't happen too much because these are false witnesses. Im heiduhu, obviously they're not happy with this chap at all, but they give testimony against, have you got it? 12 little narrow lines up, 8 maybe. Im heidu shegonav, gave testimony, v'ein lo mal shalem. If someone is a thief and has no money to repay, then he's sold to make up that money. V'nigma dinoi limoche is sold, and the money for the sale will go to the person who owns the money, who he stole the money. If he hasn't got the money, another posuk of Mishpatim, lots of Mishpatim for us, say the Mishpatim. You with me? So, what happened here? This individual came, the Eidim come forward and say that Reuven stole money from Shimon. We were there in the court, and there was a verdict, and Reuven stole money from Shimon, and he hasn't got any money to pay. Therefore, he should become an Eved Ivri. Then 2 other witnesses come forward and say, you 2 witnesses, false witnesses, you were with us on the day you say this all took place. It didn't happen. Well, maybe it didn't happen, but you don't know anything about it. You weren't there at the place you said you were. Now, what's going to happen to them? Normally, Eidim Zomim means, as we said before, it rebounds on them. So should they become Eidim Zomim? Should they become an Eved? They wanted Reuven to become an Eved. Maybe they should become an Eved. This is exceptional. They do not become Avodim. Now, have a look at the Gemara, please. Einim kored be'eved ivri. Soba Rav Hamnuna lemeima. Rav Hamnuna, or we thought Rav Hamnuna, said the following. Now, Hani Mili, these words apply. Heicha where de islay ledidei, where he had money. In other words, Reuven had the money to repay. They came forward and said that Reuven stole money, right? Stole whatever it was. He had the money to pay and therefore would have paid. They, however, do not have money. How are they going to pay? Maybe this is what we're talking about. Demigu de ihu lo mizdam. And seeing as Reuven would not have been killed because he had the money to repay it, had it been true, in hunami lo mizdabna. That's why they're not going to be sold. Avobat heiche de les leiledi. If he didn't have the money, Afagav, even though the isluhu leditu, they have got the money, maybe they would be sold. Do you understand? There are lots of options here. Who's got the money? Who hasn't got the money? Both of them might have money or not have money. So we think, to start with, when we said in this exceptional case that they don't get what they intended, it's where he's got money, the person they testified about had the money, therefore he would never have been sold, even though they haven't got the money. But that's not what they wanted to do to Reuben. They didn't want him to be sold because he had the money. However, where he didn't have the money, that means they wanted him to be sold. Maybe in that case they would go and they would be sold and become a avodim. Yeah, maybe he'd pick up the money for it. You with me? That's what we think. Says the Gemara, no. They can say back to him where he hasn't got the money. That means they wanted him to be sold. However, we testified that you stole the money. That means if you had the money to repay, you would have paid the money. If you didn't have the money, you would have been sold. It just so happens that that's what had you had money, me having mizdabant, would you have been sold? No, you wouldn't. Ananami. So therefore, we also shouldn't be sold. In other words, it's not just what was meant to happen, but what the verdict was. We caused a verdict that you were a thief, right? Then you just follow that through. It's true we were Eidim Zomimim, therefore we will pay whatever we intended should be the ending of that verdict. The ending of the verdict is a certain amount of money was meant to be paid. How he was meant to be paid, it can be two ways. Either you've got the cash to pay it, or you can get hold of the money. If you can't get hold of the money, you'd have to be sold. It's true, you would have been sold, but had you had the money, you would have paid. So the argument is, even if they wanted to inflict this Eved situation on Reuven, it's not that they wanted to inflict Eved, making him an Eved. They wanted to inflict on him, causing him a thief to pay up a certain amount of money. How he pays it up could have been paid up with cash, could have been paid up with becoming an Eved. We actually have the money, so we're not going to become an Eved Ivri. Even though we want to inflict it on you. No, we wanted to, that's the argument, you see. Their argument would be, we didn't want to inflict on you that you'd become an Eved. We wanted to inflict on you, you've got to make a payment of X somehow. How you pay it is up to you. So therefore,
surely they must be aware, and in committing the false witness that they committed, they must be aware of the possible punishment.
That's true.
Therefore, to say that they were oblivious to the very real possibility that he might not have had the money and therefore would have been sold
you're quite
as an
right.
Eved, is to sort of turn a blind eye to the gravity of the full gravity of what they did.
With you, but there is that possibility. Maybe someone will come forward and help him out with the money, give him some type of loan or whatever. We don't know how he's going to pay that off. It's true. It just so happens he had no one, couldn't get hold of the money, couldn't get out a loan. You're right. It was a real possibility. And it may well be that they thought that might happen. But nevertheless, this is the very important point. What it means is it's the edus, the testimony that they're giving for a verdict which rebounds on them. It's the verdict, a certain amount of money needs to be paid. That verdict falls on them. That's what they can argue, and that's hard to disagree with that. It may well be ultimately he'll have to be sold. Well, that's a separate point. It's the verdict. That's all the Bezdin does. They only pronounce a verdict that he is a thief and owes X. Right, next stage. How are you going to pay that? Well, we don't know. Get a loan, got the money, cash. Don't know. Maybe you'll have to be sold. It's just so it turned out that the end was going to be that he was going to be, it was Nigmar Din, that he was going to be sold. But they can argue and say, no, that's his fault. That's not our fault. You're right. It's a bit, I wouldn't say turning a blind eye, but it is a possibility that maybe at last minute he'll get the money. So therefore, ananami, we shouldn't be sold. Ella, the conclusion is the following. Soba Rav Hamnun, it goes like this. Hani Mili, Heichi de Islay, if he had the money, Olididu, Lidide Olididu, whether either has the money, if he had the money, then they shouldn't be sold. Olididu, or they've got the money, he hasn't got the money. In all those cases, he doesn't need to, they don't need to sell the Eidim Zomimim. However, if they haven't got the money and he also hasn't got the money, which means now there's a verdict of the money. He was a thief, owed this money, he couldn't pay it, so it rebounds on them. They also can't pay it. Now that looks very clear that they should be sold. There's no way, you would argue, how they could not be sold. They wanted him to have a debt to pay of X. How is he going to pay it? He hasn't got the money. It was going to be sold. So they actually, as you said before, Sam, they knew, and it actually happened, he was going to be sold. It now rebounds on them. They haven't got the money. So they certainly should be sold in that case. So the exception we said before presumably does not include that case. Omar le Rava, says Rava, no. There's a pasuk, and again, v'nimka bignei vosai. Again, back to Shemos, again back to Mishpatim. When it's talking about payments, it says v'nimka, if he hasn't got the money, v'nimka bignei voso. He is sold for his acting as a thief. Omer Rachmana. Bignei vosoi. Below bismamo. There's a tradition, the pshat in this pasuk is the following. A person is sold if they were a thief. They haven't got the money, but they were a thief. If they are an Eidim Zomim where they actually haven't stolen anything, then from that pasuk, there would never be the ruling of becoming an Eved. That's what this means. The nimka bignei vosoi below bismomai, but not by coming an Eid Zomim. You with me? So the conclusion of the Gemara is, then in all those cases, and now we don't have to look for logic because there's a pasuk. There's a pasuk which tells us the ruling that if someone doesn't have the money, that they are then sold, becoming an eved to get the money. That only applies to someone who really was a thief. They're Eidim Zomimim, but they actually didn't steal money. They wanted someone to pay money. So they are not, they do not become an evidivri. So if they give testimony about someone who stole money and the individual did not have the money, he would have been sold. They're found to be Eidim Zomim. Even if they don't have the money, they are still not sold. With me? So that is reserved only, this idea of having, of course, they'll have to make up the money somehow. No. So what did they? No, let's just follow this through. They wanted him to be sold. They are not going to be sold. Right? That will not happen to them. That's what we're saying here. This punishment of Eidim Zomimim that they expected, whether they expected or knew, or that this is what was going to happen, that he was going to be sold, this will not rebound on them. They will not have that. And therefore it looks like, as we explained before, where you actually can't, we saw last time, where you cannot carry out the Eidim Zomimim rule, then normally, depending again on the health of the individual, he will get makas instead. And we said that before. There's some argument about that, but that's you can see from Rashi, it sounds like that, where you cannot be Makayim, this Hazom, and you can't do it here. You can't sell this individual because they're Eidim Zomim, and there's a posuk to say you can't do that. Therefore, in that instance, let's say you do not carry that across, and it sounds like, according to Moses, actually they will get Malchus instead. Somebody had a question. Is that Malcolm? Yes.
Yes, sorry. Well, actually, it goes back a little bit to what Mervyn was saying, and maybe just on the definition of the Eidim Zomim.
Yes.
So, I mean, is there a discussion about what actually constitutes Eidim Zomim? Because, for example, if you had, let's say, I mean, you're working on the assumption that, you know, they've thought it out, they thought it through, so they know that their testimony would be that the person would then be called a thief, and therefore that they would be liable to pay, or that they would actually be sold into slave. They would become an Ivri. And that requires sort of forethought that what they're doing.
Oh, I mean, that's
imagine. I mean, what I'm saying is, if it was not, like, you know, it was not intended that they're unreliable. Is there a discussion about intentional unreliability and unreliability? I mean,
I'm not sure what you mean by intentional. I mean,
well, in other words, that, you know, they're not making it up. They're not making it up. They intended to tell the truth.
No. These are Eidim Zomim. They did not intend to tell the truth. That's why they did that. Okay, you can come up with lots of reasons why they planned to do this, why they wanted this fellow to be sold, why they want him to spend this money, why they want him to be killed. They may be saying that this person's a murderer.
That's the meaning, isn't it? Zomim means a plotter, someone who's plotting something.
That's right. They are plotting this. Why they're plotting it, you can come up with any reasons you like, but at the end of the day, they are found to be liars.
Unreliable.
And not just unreliable. They are no, it's not unreliable. They are not telling the truth. When they came to court and said, "We saw him kill, we saw this murder take place," and then two other witnesses says, "You couldn't possibly because you were with us in Bournemouth, and the events took place up in somewhere, you know, up north somewhere. You couldn't possibly have seen it." They're not telling the truth. That is a very specific case of Eidim Zomim. And the ruling is it rebounds on them. That's the point.
I see. So it's not about, for example, like the new moon Eidim, where they make it unreliable.
No. We're not talking about unreliable. No, that's not.
This is definitely.
We're talking about here of plotting. They are plotting something against an individual, and the ruling is whatever they plan to do will come back on them, on their heads. Let it be.
So it's like a double crime situation. I mean, there is a crime. They're inventing a crime somewhere else, but they are the criminals.
They are, in fact, they are the criminals. They are the Zomim. Yeah, indeed. And the question is, what punishment do they get? We want those individuals to feel, if it's money or anything else, put themselves in the place of the people they wanted to harm. They wanted those people to pay up that money. Well, let's see what it's like. You pay up that money now. They wanted this person to get Malchus or whatever, or even a death penalty. You'll have those individuals will rebound back on them. Always this idea of midah keneged midah and feeling for the other individual. That's what it's all about. Put yourself in their shoes. That's what you wanted to do.
But what we're saying is, in the end, it's ein tachat ein. Whatever you wanted to cause the other person, you would actually have to pay up. You set him up for something, and that's what you're going to get in return.
Yes, indeed. But it's more about also the feeling. This is what you intended this person to, if you like, suffer. You have to. That's the ownership is that the same way around, and it's a very important because I know we're talking about Eidim Zomim here, but it's a general piece. A person should always be feeling for the other individual, whatever they're going through. I mean, you talk about nowadays, sadly, what's going on. You know, we should be feeling for the other individuals, what they're going through. We're all in this together. We're feeling for the other individual, the people who are suffering. We should be feeling, and again, enjoying their simchas. You know, if we've got a simcha, you go to the simcha to try and enjoy it with them. They're happy, be happy for them. And if they're sadly in Avelus, then we should also be feeling for them. The same way here, they intended this individual to have a certain amount of suffering. Well, yeah, you suffer with individual, but you actually wanted to place extra suffering on him. It will rebound back on you. The real way to do this is when people sadly really are suffering, suffer with them. Or the other way around, if they're happy, be happy with them. Be happy for the other individuals. That's what it's all about. So it's very powerful. And when you talk about this eye for an eye, yeah, an eye for an eye, of course, normally means compensation payments, but that's a separate point. But again, it means, why is it written in those terms, an eye for an eye? They're very interesting. I mean, I'll just finish with this. You know, people are sometimes challenged with, you know, it's such a cruel religion, this eye for an eye. How can it possibly be? Actually, it means money. And there's very good proofs in Hebrew, because it says you should give it to him. You don't give, you know, knock out someone's eye. You don't give him a hand. You don't give him an eye. So clearly it does mean money, in which case you could ask them, why did the Torah use these words? Why not just say monetary payments? If ever you're challenged on this topic, how cruel it is. In other words, why does it say an eye for an eye if it really means monetary payment? It does mean monetary payments. You can see that the way, as I say, it talks about you give them. And the answer, says the Maharal, I think we mentioned this before, an eye for an eye, because it's not just you make this payment and that's it. You're meant to feel for the other individual. If this is the damage you've caused, then you're meant to feel for them. That's what it means, an eye for an eye. And in fact, you've still got to go and ask kapara from them, mechila from them, because you've got to feel, what would it be like without this eye, without this hand? That's the feeling the individual having. And only if you have that feeling do you have the full kapara and hopefully the mechila from the other individual. You can, you know, it's not like it's not like
you could argue. So you could argue that. Sorry.
Yeah, Simon.
Isn't there a Tanai who says "Ein tachat ein mamash"?
No.
There is an argument that it's mamash.
No.
There is.
No.
Pretty sure.
No.
Studied it, but I'll bring
reform.
Well, we look forward to that.
Okay.
No, it means mom. I mean, ein tachat ein is no. How can it possibly be? This person.
No, I understand. But I'm saying there is a view. There is a view that it was originally mamash.
A reform view.
I think so. Maybe you'll find that.
I'll try and find it.
Please email me. No, it can't put. And I mean, as you can say, imagine the fellow's a pianist. You know, losing a hand from a pianist is rather different from somebody who's not. I mean, you know, how can you value a hand for a hand? But I have the Maharal, beautiful Maharal there, that you've got to feel as if you've lost that hand, if that's what you've done. It's not like a monetary payment. You know, you've broken the window, so, you know, give him back give him insurance money and, you know, get it repaired and on you go. You've got to feel for the individual, and actually it's not good enough just to, you know, give the money. You do need to have,
so what we're talking about here, the Zoimemim, is a nice extension of that, because that's exactly what you're trying to do.
Yes, you're trying to instill upon them the feel. Yeah. What is it like? What's it going to be like with that in that same situation? That's what we want, and we want the same, and I say, in all those cases. But ultimately, let's all rejoice together, hopefully all soon, and hear Basuras Tovas one from the other, and enjoy with other people their good fortune. And with that, gentlemen, we leave you well. Thank you very much, Peter. We should just say a capital. I think Peter brings up Tehillim 121 for us before we conclude. Oh, wow. Quick off the mark there. Okay, let's go. Shir Lamalos. Ezri meim Adonai Mayim Voretz Achenu kol beis Yisrael, hanusuim b'Torah v'shivyo, hoimdim beim b'yom avein b'yabasha amokim yerachim aleim yotzim mitzolo lilvocho mi'afele le'olam v'shibu ligula hashta b'agola izman korid v'noim amen. Particularly Mark, especially we're thinking, well, all of them in particular. We talk about Yeshim Yishmat Seis Chovecha. They're going out and they're coming back. Hopefully, B'Korov, we should see return. All of them coming back. All those warriors. And only here, Basuras Tovus, one from the other. Without Anthony's son.